Yeah, but can we see the folks that are joining, or is that going to be,
You'll see a list on the attendees tab. So hi everyone.
got it.
Uh,
See
we
it.
we're just going to take a few minutes to let people join the webinar before we begin. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks, Gabby. Morning, everyone. Looks like people are starting to fill in, and we will give it just about 3 or 4 minutes until we get started.
Justin, I think you can begin. Um, Gabby put in a chat. She think it's leveled off.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a beautiful morning to talk about what we think is a very exciting development opportunity on the near South Lakefront in the confluence of kind of the Bronzeville, Oakwood area, and Kenwood as well, North Kenwood. So just a couple of ground rules. There will be a lot of attendees. So we have a question box that folks can type their questions in, and we will try to get to all of those questions toward the end after a brief presentation. We also respond in writing and post that on the website. So anything that we aren't able to address at this moment, or need to kind of uh, uh, check further or look further into, we will be sure to try to respond in that way. My name is Justin Peterson. I'm a city planner and architect, focused really on Bronzeville and the near South Lakefront. Joined by other folks from the city here as well, including supervising planner Lisa Washington from the of the Southeast region, as well as Deputy Commissioner David Scully and Nelson Chung, who helps manage our block builder and land sales programs. So I'll get into this brief presentation. We want to start with just kind of the nuts and bolts of where we are and how we see this process unfolding. As everybody is aware, the city has launched the Block Builder platform. So we are, rather than issuing kind of more traditional RFPs or RFQs, we are using Block Builder as our platform for city-owned land sales. And so the application process is kind of merged with that. But given the scale of the amount of parcels, the scale of the sites and the opportunity here, we're also kind of asking for a little bit more than we would from a traditional land sale. So we're about a month into this initial application period, which we're allocating 3 months for, given, again, in this case, the scale of the opportunity. Today is our pre-bid meeting or pre-development conference. I should note that the applications for this first round will be due actually Monday, the 1st of July. We had initially in the document put that previous Friday. So that gives folks over the weekend to tidy up loose ends. Following an initial application, we will process those applications. We have basically a scoring matrix that we use for Block Builder and land sale applications. And we will sort of move forward really with anybody that we think is shown sufficiently that they've completed an application, that they've demonstrated that they're able to potentially develop one of these sites. So shortlist, we're calling this this period of July being a kind of shortlist determination. It may not be, depending on the response, that short of a list. If we have 3 folks that are interested in, or 3 teams that are interested in developing one site, and they all have submitted strong applications, then we can continue to work with those teams moving forward through a kind of second phase process or second step to the application process, which will just involve a little bit more actual conceptual work about what the development could be, and that may very well involve some public engagement, so that the development teams are able to hear from the community directly in terms of things that they would like to see or thoughts and concerns. And then ultimately that'll lead up to, after this kind of second concept phase, a public presentation, which we're anticipating at this time to be sometime in probably early October. So that's still a few months out. We think we've got enough time here to really develop some exciting proposals, and we're really excited to see the applications that we receive. So just as a matter of process, again, the initial application does need to occur or happen through the Block Builder platform. So for those of you that haven't been to the website, we'll pull it up real quick. This is the homepage. You can just Google Chicago Block Builder, and you'll see that there are various tabs. This is really the kind of headliner of the featured listings for this round, this kind of spring round of listings. So if you were to look at the featured listings and look at the development vision, that'll take you to the kind of document that we posted online, which includes a lot more information about both the area and the kind of process, and what our expectations are. We'll try to hit the highlights here this morning, but certainly this is a good reference to look through any additional information that may be needed, especially on the back end in terms of things like developer rights and responsibilities, submission requirements for each of the steps and process. But the actual application itself, you'll want to go. There are a couple of ways of doing this. I think maybe the easiest way is to just go directly to the map, which includes both all the city-owned lots, but again, most of these are not available at the time, and then the lots that are available for open applications. And then you can basically zoom into the map. And as everyone is aware, and while we're here this morning, we have this cluster. So to be clear, that we're not asking any development team to apply for all of them. Certainly that's possible if the teams are interested in that, and that seems like the right move from a feasibility standpoint. But we have clustered each pin that makes up what we consider to be a single site. Several of these sites have additional one or two additional private pins, which we would like to see consolidated into a more comprehensive development. Um, but certainly, development teams are free to pursue that as they see fit. So each site will need its own application initially. Um, and basically, you select the site and then you click apply for the lots and you begin the process here. Let me go back to my presentation real quick. So that's kind of what this is indicating here. And this is a pretty straightforward process. There's also a frequently asked questions on the Block Builder website if anybody has any needs to do some troubleshooting there. So just to get to the actual sites themselves and talk a little bit about the discussions that we've been having as a city and with the aldermen. Um, you know, there's been some interest in this area for some time. For a few years, we've had different folks come forward and interested in developing here, but um, we haven't been able to get anything off the ground. And part of that is that we don't think that we were really considering it at the right scale. We wanted to really look at this comprehensively, and that was at the direction as well of Alderman Fourth Ward Alderman Robinson. To really think of this more like a full kind of development. We have 30 city-owned pins on 6 sites. And, as this map attempts to communicate, we think this is really an amazing opportunity, given that this is a moment where not only has the city done a lot of infrastructure work in the recent past in terms of building additional pedestrian bridges, redoing Mandrake Park, obviously 31st Street Beach to the north. But there's a lot of potential transit infrastructure that is kind of comes to a node here. We do have existing bus routes, including the Cottage Grove Express route, that qualify this for transit-oriented development, which at the kind of highest level means that parking requirements and so forth can be essentially reduced to zero. Of course, we understand the market also, will dictate some of those needs as well, depending on unit mix or typologies, whether it's rental or condos or townhouses and so forth. But we've also been in discussion, and this is mentioned in the document, with Metra about looking at a potential infill station here at 39th Street. We think this is a great location. They are supportive of looking further into that. As some folks may know, they're kind of in the process of coming up of reevaluating the system as well. There was even a bill introduced, I think yesterday at the state level, to look at transit potentially more comprehensively and consolidate the agencies. And part of that is that that reconceiving Metra is not just a commuter rail that's trying to get people to work and back, at the beginning and end of the day, but as something that has more consistent service that could operate more like we think of like a rapid transit line, like a CTA, and that would be more, consistently useful at all times of day and the week. So we think that could unlock a lot of potential, not just for these sites, but for the rest of the neighborhood. The other part of this is that, as you can see on this map, there's a existing viaduct, what was formerly known as the Kenwood line, which was actually a spur from the rapid transit line before it became the CTA, that came to the lakefront to North Kenwood. The city is currently looking at transforming that into it doesn't really have an identity yet, but it's part of the Rails to Trails initiative. So some kind of pedestrian oriented space. It's each one of these, there's multiple, as folks know, probably may be familiar with the 606 in Logan Square and Bucktown. This is very different from that. It's going to take some years to both craft that identity and work with the neighborhood on that, but also secure funding. But it's very much in the works. We have a neighborhood partner with that, and we'll looking into ways to pursue that. So that'll be nearby as well. And again, there's the last thing I'll note here is the yellow lines or the bike paths. And though, like in many other cases, the bike infrastructure on the south side isn't equitable yet to the north side. This is an area where it's actually there's been quite a bit of investment, and it's what we would really consider to be the kind of lowest stress route from points south and west to the lakefront, which just means that with the boulevards connecting here, this could be a great location for folks to get around the city in that way. Again, with the potential transit, these are things that have been the idea of using the Metra more consistently has been in the works for years, from neighborhood proposals like what was called the Gold Line on the left to more recently the Cross Rail, which is again looking at Metra as a system that could serve the entire region, including potentially service to points northwest like O'Hare from this location. So all of these discussions are being had, and we're excited about the way that this opportunity can plug into that. Again, these are the sites here on the lakefront and the Bronzeville Trail just south of it. Just some other notes, again, some initial planning exercises and thinking from the city side about the trail itself and about access points. Certainly those would be nearby to this site. And again, not just here, but multiple other large development sites in the area. So to talk about the sites themselves, there's kind of a wide variety here, which we think is a great thing for both generating a unit mix or different types of units, everything from townhomes to rental units, and being able to also kind of craft the development so that it both is bringing what we consider to be much needed density to the South Lakefront to help generate the foot traffic and the income to bring in more shops and restaurants and neighborhood amenities. So starting with Site 1, and I'll just go through these individually. Site 1 is the northernmost site, Lake Park, and the smallest site. It's really just two relatively large standard residential pins or parcels. We think that this could work quite well for townhomes. On corner lots like this, we like to see the townhomes really face, in this case, what would be a reconstructed, I guess that would be 38th Street as it connects to an alley. I should mention that we've already been having conversations with CDOT about an additional alley connection to the rear of sites 1 and 2, just for access purposes. So we think this would work great for townhomes. It could be facing north, potentially upper levels might even get a view of the lake or the city. The second parcel, Site 2, or second cluster of parcels, is one of the largest, but maybe the largest in this offering. Looking at this internally, it is a large site. It's deep, as deep as I want to say it's more than 200 feet. So more deeper than its standard lot. And, just from our own internal test fitting, certainly this is big enough to accommodate either a couple of dozen townhomes or townhomes and with a mix of a multi-unit or multi-family residential building that, from a planning perspective, we would want to see setback from the street. So the street could be lined with townhomes that would be more consistent with the existing neighborhood. And then perhaps a taller building could be towards the lake, which would take advantage, of course, of the lake views and the views to the north. Site 3 is one of what we would consider the mixed use sites, and really the site that maybe has the most potential if it can be combined with the adjacent private pins, which are currently vacant. These I think two row house buildings for something potentially quite substantial. We don't basically our highest residential or our highest zoning category right now is either a B35 or a RM65 in outside of the downtown area. So, 5 or 6.6 even FAR is still quite considerable. So we think that this could, accommodate a mid-rise, which would again take advantage of lake views, but then also bring a critical density and kind of anchor the corner with some active retail. We're also open to other programmatic proposals. This could be a site for potentially if there's a market for it, a hotel, a boutique hotel. Um, it's also, given its adjacency to the lakefront, any uses that may be supportive of that, of folks going to the lakefront. Site 4 is just west, and it's where basically 39th and Oakwood Boulevard merge. It's a relatively small site, but given that it visually is quite prominent and it helps kind of form this sort of gateway to the lakefront, we would like to see it maximized for its potential. So again, some kind of ground floor active use with residential above. Site 5 is the other kind of larger mixed use site where we would certainly entertain a mix of programmatic uses. Again, everything from ground floor retail or other active use to residential, and again, potentially a hotel location. We also would note that we understand that there's, of course, a lot of folks that want to come to Mandrake Park for various athletic events. The high school nearby uses the fields, the lakefront as well. So if there is a need for kind of shared parking, either site 5 or site 3, we think would be the most the most opportune places for that, given again their prominence on the kind of major intersection. Site 6 is similar to site 2 in that it's more it's off the main intersection, and it's really getting more into the neighborhood. So this is again an area where we think some combination of townhomes with potentially a multifamily building sculpted so that it's set back or and steps down so that it's not an imposing presence in the neighborhood, but does take advantage of the site and its adjacency again to the lake views, and to a potential again infill transit station to bring that critical density. These are just a couple of examples of the kind of full build out scenario. The example on the left is the less complicated of these two. And this kind of illustrates, and these aren't meant to communicate, I should note, any designs or anything like that. It's purely a kind of seeing what the actual volume of building that we could get with the current zoning. I should say with the current zoning allowance. Most of these parcels are either currently zoned RM5 or B33, but again, we're willing to entertain higher zoning designations, particularly at the kind of sites right at Oakwood and Lake Park. So here you can see, for example, again, townhomes lining the street with potential mid-rise or facing the lake. Similar condition at Lake Park. And then for the most part, 4, 5, and 6 being more kind of the scale of building for example, some of the Invest Southwest projects. So something more on the 6 to 7 or 8-story range. The scenario on the right actually looks at combining both site 2 and 3 with we have, I should mention, an existing applicant for a one site sort of in between, and then there are existing townhomes into a single PD. The advantage of that, though it may be complex and will require sign off from existing property owners, is that it would allow us to port or allow the development team to port development rights from site 2 to site 3 so that we could get something more like a high rise that we would see, in the West Loop or closer to downtown. We think that could be a very exciting opportunity, just again simply from the demand of people want to live near the lake and have the lake views, and we think that that could be a great opportunity, and it would help also um, move or shift the density away from the kind of neighborhood street to the more prominent street corner and immediately adjacent to a potential infill station. That's what I have for our brief presentation. We can certainly get into more details, but that I think provides a pretty good overview. Um, let's see here.
You have a couple of questions. Do
Yeah.
you want me to read them off or?
No, I can, yeah, I can take it. So we have a question here. Will there be other webinars for featured listings on Block Club or Block Builder? This
Nelson, you
is,
want to answer that one?
yeah,
Yeah, I can jump in. This is Nelson Chung from Current Planning. Question here. The first question is whether there'll be other webinars for future listings on Black Builder. Right now, this is our only planned webinar for this round of Black Builder, and kind of what Justin said at this one's a little more complicated. It's got more moving parts. The other listings we have in ChiBlockBuilder, I think, are much more straightforward. So right now we're not planning to have any other webinars for this round.
that's right. Yeah, most of the land sales offered through Block Builder are more traditional, right? They're more like typical city lots. They're not necessarily grouped together in this kind of a context. So we felt this one needed special attention and opportunities to discuss. Okay, next question. Will attendee names be shared so potential collaborations can be established with interested parties? I think I would have to defer to Gabby on that.
I was just checking with Pete, so we'll get back
We'll
to
get
you.
back.
Okay.
Yeah, we do know that there are a lot of community members who registered for this event versus people explicitly doing development projects or business members. So I just want to check with him before we answer that.
Sure. I will say that the city certainly wants to elevate Black and brown developers. So folks from the neighborhood, I mean, this is a large scale development, so we would very much encourage partnerships between local developers and or developers that may bring more capacity and be able to kind of mentor our smaller developers and through this process. Okay, the next one is a little bit long, so let me read through it real quick.
Oh yeah, Justin, I just got confirmation. We can post the attendees of the webinar. So
Okay, great.
thanks.
Okay, it looks like there's just questioning about developing here in relation to concerns with the wildlife corridor. Broadly speaking, citywide, the city is, this is especially the time of year, right, where there's tremendous amount of bird migrations, millions, overnight sometimes, and we know that we have an issue with the way that particularly high rises and glass clad buildings can be deadly for birds. So I think we're looking at that broadly speaking as part of the lakefront protection ordinance. I should mention that all of the sites east of Lake Park, so that would be going back to go back to my main map. This is probably more helpful. Sites 1, 2, and 3 would be affected by the lakefront protection ordinance. And we would certainly, prioritize bird-friendly design in those cases. So I'll move on to another one. Yeah, there's a question about the Metropolitan Water District vent that is a piece of infrastructure located really between south of Site 2. This is Site 2 and Site 3. So this is a green space that will exist in perpetuity. This is where basically vents for the deep tunnel project come up, and they need access to those vents for servicing. Certainly, we would hope that in the future, we'll be able to landscape this into more of a proper, small park. But that is certainly a piece of infrastructure that development teams and other folks in the neighborhood, should be aware of. Yes, we will be recording. This will be recorded and is being recorded and will be posted to the website. Moving on. Yes, another recording question. There's a question about property taxes. So, I mean, we can, discuss, I don't, there's no way for us to answer about this right now, I think, in terms of a property tax freeze, but, one of the reasons why the city is actually wants to encourage more development and greater density is that the more folks that we have in the city, it reduces the tax burden, or at least it may help it to slow the increase of the tax burden. There's just more people paying into the system. So, I mean, we hear that concern. I think it's something that is being discussed at a lot of levels, but it's really hard to answer that now. Can we elaborate on the scoring measure to determine qualified developers? So we have ChiBlockBuilder. We have a kind of, I think it's, was a 100-point system, Nelson. And basically a lot of it, frankly, in the first round is a kind of completion of what the application's asking for. And that includes demonstrating financial capability, having really the capacity to move forward, and then also proposing something that is consistent with both what the city would like to see, but what we think is feasible from a kind of financing and constructability standpoint. Nelson, I don't know, did you want to add
Yeah,
anything?
and we should add in, I think for this one, for the Oakwood cluster, I think we would suggest that any interested applicant kind of thoroughly read the vision document that Justin put together. So again, that's could be kind of like that forms a basis for kind of like the framework in terms of how Justin's team would be kind of looking at and scoring the initial round of applications.
Yeah, thanks, Nelson. Okay, we have a question about will there be space for a farmer's market or something potentially on site too? We'll leave that sort of to the development teams. The city's priority is really getting the housing and then the retail and amenities that the neighborhood needs, to fill those needs. There's a lot of open space nearby, but certainly if there is a plaza space that can be used and activated with a farmer's market, or if some kind of gardening, makes sense, we can entertain that. Okay, and then we have a question: will there be a chance for existing homeowners to weigh in on proposed projects before acceptance, with concerns about parking for the area? Yes, certainly. We have we are really at the very beginning of this process. So this is sort of an informational presentation. Once we actually have development teams, that are kind of moving forward with proposals, or with, we will certainly, like I said, look to have an engagement session where those teams can hear concerns from the neighbors. That's prior to even, having a design or anything. And then when presentations are made for an actual proposal in the fall, certainly there'll be a chance for feedback there. And also, even at that stage, those will still just be proposals. There's nothing, this is a long process. It'll involve a land sale. It may involve PDs, which are triggered by unit counts or height, or again, if in the example that we showed, people are trying to kind of combine sites in order to shift around development rights. So that there will be many opportunities to weigh in. And in related to the parking, again, we know that there's some concerns with parking in the area, particularly as it's related to some events, both with the churches nearby and around Mandrake Park. Um, we have some strategies for maybe dealing with that, but it's also a case where we, we are encouraging transit-oriented development in the sense that the city would like to see more people here, but not necessarily more people with cars. So, folks that are, walking around on their feet, using and really bringing street life to the neighborhood, using transit, bikes, and so forth. That will both enrich the kind of street life and bring the people and the kind of income for those amenities without snarling traffic. And there's plenty of evidence that younger generations, the type of folks that may move into a lakefront high rise, often do not come with a car. So we will we'll continue that, but we understand it's a concern. Let's see. Are we open to individual projects? Yes, I mean, so if there's a smaller development team that just wants to look at doing some townhomes, let me go back to my site. Let's say, at site one, absolutely. There's no reason why, or we're not compelling, a development team to bite off more than it can potentially deliver. So that's why we think this is a great mix in that it's got some smaller opportunities and then some also some larger scale. So certainly, again, if there's smaller local developers that neighborhood developers that would want to get in on the ground, like with and maybe lead one of the smaller sites, but also partner with another development team on a larger initiative, that's certainly something we'd be open to. Okay. Again, there's a question about parking and traffic, and that's again why we want to emphasize the transit-oriented nature and work with development teams to pursue a feasibility study on the infill metro station, because ultimately, again, we would uh, like to see more people using that infrastructure. But again, that's a conversation. It's hard in some cases to respond to things without proposals, right? Because we just don't even, it may be that it's not feasible to do more than a bunch of townhomes, right? In which case, on most of these sites, in which case, um, those typically come with their own parking. Has the city had any initial conversations with Metra about the viable? Yes, again, we have discussed this with Metra. Basically, there's a process whereby we need to do a feasibility study, or work with the development team, presumably on sites, on the larger sites, to pursue that development or that feasibility study. But based over our conversation with them, I mean, this is entirely consistent with the way that they're now thinking about the South Shore or the Metro Electric, this line in particular, which is kind of unique in the metro system in that it's electric. It kind of runs on the same gauge as like the CTA. It's it could be sort of moved more into like a rapid transit, frequent headways like every 10 minutes or so, maybe than some of the other lines.
I think it's important to stress that these are just conversations with Metro. There's nothing
Yes.
Proposed at this time.
Correct. Yeah, the feasibility study will basically determine, if this is something that can be moved forward, but we're pretty optimistic.
Yeah, and a lot of it is going to be based off of the development proposals we receive. So
Right.
they are going to need to understand, and I think Kinshasa has worked really closely together on the Brownsville Lakefront as part of the community there. It's a similar, sort of process where, once the development proposal comes, then, we can have the ability to evaluate that with Metro and understand if there's a need or if there's enough demand for the station. So it's sort of a chicken and egg thing. We have to kind of
Right.
understand what the development possibility is, and then work with everybody to have a study to see if an infill station can make sense.
Right. Yeah, and yeah, exactly. That we really, in order to make the station feasible, basically we didn't need enough people to potential users and transit riders. So that's part of the again, bringing a sufficient number of housing units here. Let's see here. Information railway to the east of each lot. I guess I'm not really, there's a question from an anonymous attendee. I'm not really quite understanding that. Maybe you could clarify. When will bidding begin? If by bidding, you mean, I mean, the application process is open now. If you mean from a contractor standpoint, I mean, that won't come until, till later, until there's actual proposals. So I wouldn't anticipate anything, prior to next year. Let's see. In terms of a percentage, well, for Black developers in the area, I mean, we have, so all city-owned land sales are governed by MWBE requirements in terms of contractors. In terms of development teams, I don't know that we have a metric, but it's something, again, we want to encourage partnerships and building capacity. The reality is that they're, depending on the nature of the project, there aren't necessarily a lot of people that can do development at scale. If it's townhomes, it's one thing. If it's more of a mid or high rise, that's another. So any partnerships that can build a capacity, is something that we're going to encourage.
And just now I'll add in, because I think
Yeah.
on this specifically, like we, really strive for development and developers and, sort of the entire team to appropriately represent and, kind of engage the community that that they're operating in. So, I think in this case, similar to other projects that we've done in other communities, really focusing on, sort of Black and brown developers being in strong roles leading on this project. But I mean, it's one of those things that's tough to control at this stage. We're, putting out our aspiration for that. And then we'll see what, opportunities and developments, developer teams come back. But we definitely want to strive for that not just participation, but leadership and ownership in a lot of these projects.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, a question about, I guess, the building to the east of the tracks. That's actually, I think that's probably an IDOT facility or Park District.
Park District,
Yeah, it has
So-
Park District, Justin.
Yeah. Okay. So Park District facility, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we would,
Yeah,
if you look at the alignment of all the development at east of the metro trails, it's basically all, green space and Park District. So I think we would not be considering like private development east.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's really technically part of the park. So,
Yeah.
it's essentially protected green space, even though it's used by the maintenance facility. Okay, so yes, could two developers submit a joint application? Yeah, I mean, certainly, again, like the idea of proposing a joint venture or however a partnership situation wants to be arranged, that is absolutely possible, and including for a smaller local developer and maybe a non-local, again, to help build capacity. Again, just in terms of scoring process, we will prioritize, again, local neighborhood and Black and brown developers. Elected officials who have been, and this is really, in many ways, inspired by Alderman Robinson's desire to really focus on this area. As I mentioned, we had some kind of interested parties popping up, but nothing at scale. And so I think looking at this more comprehensively was, that was part of his push when he first came in to office last year.
Hey, Justin, I just want to
Yeah.
jump in. I saw an earlier email or earlier question about the deadlines, and just to reiterate, the deadline for the Oakwood clusters, this is July 1st, but then another question in terms of the other deadlines and ChiBlockBuilder. So within ChiBlockBuilder, I think Justin had shown you the website. If you click on each individual lot, actually it tells you whether it's a May 17th or July 1st deadline. So that's the best way to identify deadlines for individual clusters and lots throughout the what's being listed in ChiBlock for not just this one, but all the other lots being listed right now.
We have a question about permit parking, and again, acknowledging that in the summer, a lot of people drive to this area to park and go to the beach. That's again part of what we understand that. That's why we think, potentially a shared parking facility or deck at one of the sites might make a lot of sense. We also think that there's some excess capacity. There's some ways that we could look at bringing more street parking to the area. Just by, there's some of the streets have large right of ways and so forth. So we understand that's a need. And
To further answer that question, we would encourage you to speak with the alderman about permit parking in your community. That is something that is done via the alderman's office.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Let's see, moving on. Question about purchasing additional lots and or CHA. So we basically, in terms of how city-owned parcels are released on ChiBlockBuilder, it's kind of it's so far, it's been a new process, and we're in, I think, our second or third round here. I think we're really getting the process refined. We anticipate probably the next round of parcels to be available in the fall. If anybody is interested in a parcel, has a proposal, they could certainly contact the alderman or send us a note, or really the best way even to get started with any of that is to if you go back to the maps and view city-owned parcels, even though these are grayed out and these are not parcels that are currently available, if somebody wants to click on, if somebody's interested in developing a lot that isn't currently available, they can click on the button that says, I'm interested in this parcel, and fill out some information, give a brief description of what you're proposing, and that will basically queue the parcel to be looked at by what's called 2FM now, formerly AIS, basically to clear it for sale. Just they do a kind of historic survey of what was located there, just so we can anticipate any environmental issues. And then, in conversation with the alderman and we can potentially release additional parcels. In terms of CHA, as folks are probably aware, much of this area is kind of surrounded by CHA land and developments that are continuing, including Oakwood Shores, just to the north. So, and CHA also has a lot of scattered sites. We're in conversations with them about strategizing the best way to move forward, given their sort of resource limitations and our desire to help facilitate building housing. So, it's not something that people can't directly apply for a CHA parcel, but the city is looking at, I guess, ways of maybe doing land swaps and so forth to consolidate land where it makes sense to help development. Okay, moving on. Yes, certainly more, again, concerns about bird migration. That will definitely be something we look to. Are these sites eligible for tax incentives or TIF funds? We are in a TIF, but I would say that, like, the city is looking at this as we want to kind of test the market on what market rate development could do here. The affordable requirements in this area as a low mod area and an area that has really, Bronzeville has twice as much kind of percentage of affordable housing as the rest of the city average. So it's an area we'd like to see more market rate development. There is an affordable requirement for 10% in this area, so 10% of the unit total for any individual development, and that's triggered after 10 units. So, if we were ultimately to get, 700 or 800 units across 6 sites, that would alone produce 80 affordable units. And if folks are interested in proposing more affordable units than the requirement of the ordinance, then we could discuss potentially additional city funding.
Go ahead, Lisa.
To add on to that, it is in a TIF. TIF could be available, but it must be understood that if the product is market rate housing, only TIF eligible expenses would be reimbursed, which is things like environmental remediation. So it's not a windfall. You won't be able to get TIF for your entire projects, only for the amount that can be reimbursed under the TIF statute.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, moving on. How would these developments be beneficial to the already existing community? There are a tremendous amount of benefits to simply bringing more housing into an area. And as folks probably know, Bronzeville has lost something like 75% of its population since 1950s. More people, especially if we are smart about where we, bring the density, again, in relation to transit, brings more street traffic, brings more people for local businesses, especially if folks are living here without a car. They have more disposable income potentially that they're not spending on that, and they can frequent restaurants and so forth. So, the more people that we can locate here, the more businesses will want to be here. It also helps improve community safety just by having more eyes and more people around. And again, there's a lot of benefits. Obviously, there's concerns with density, and that's why with the city having control over these sites, we can work with the development teams to really, shape the buildings and make sure that we're being sensitive to all of the environmental issues, whether that's, again, with respect to bird migration or sun and, shadow studies, or, looking at, if somebody's going to propose a high rise, let's say at site 3, I think something like a wind tunnel test makes sense. Anybody who's lived adjacent to a high rise on the lakefront knows that sometimes that can be an issue. So, we have the ability to kind of shape these so that they're as sensitive as possible to the existing neighborhood and beneficial. Let's see. Good question here. Will the city allocate funds to agencies for this development? I'm not really clear on that. Again, if necessary, it's possible that either things like TIF or bond funding or something might be possible, but that would be dependent on the proposal.
If you can clarify what you mean by agency, perhaps we can give you a more specific answer. So let's go on to the next question. Perhaps they'll rephrase the question.
Sure. So a question about have we already received interest in these lots? What level of demand do we anticipate? And just in relation to seeing, for example, a development like the Walmart on 47th and Cottage that was, heavily supported by the city, but then ultimately, obviously, Walmart pulled out a couple of years ago. The primary focus of this is really housing. We want to see active uses on the ground, certainly on 39th Street, but it's not, and we're not looking for necessarily a big box retailer here that has, can be fickle in some of those ways. So, I think, and given both that we have seen some interest prior to sort of releasing this as a package group of sites, that there's other development happening nearby increasingly, and many of the proposals don't really involve any city action other than potentially zoning changes. We do think that this is a pretty good a good time to kind of release this, and but it is a test. So we'll sort of see what comes back. And there's nothing, should mention that, you know, in relation to that, there's nothing that compels us to move forward if, you know, ultimately what we get back isn't kind of realizing, you know, the best use we think of the sites. You know, we don't have to move forward if proposals aren't satisfactory. Can some lots be rezoned to commercial applications? Certainly, yeah, we can look at that. I mean, there's in terms of, for example, site that would probably be most appropriate for sites 3, 5, and 4. And again, the city would prefer that any of the commercial uses have housing above, so that it's not just like a, you know, convenience store or something like that with a surface parking lot. Because again, those, if we prioritize that type of development, it's just not going to get us to where we need to be in terms of, again, bringing the amount of housing that we need, which generates, again, the foot traffic for other businesses and, again, the potential for transit use. Okay, so are we anticipating a competitive process? Yeah, I mean, I think so. The block builder itself is set up as the whole idea is to be more transparent, to make the offering, and to have folks come in and make proposals and competitively. You know, I think we had almost 300 people register for this event, and we've got, looks like about 110, just north of 110 people on the call now. So I think, you know, there will certainly be interested parties, but it's possible that, you know, everybody's primarily interested in 2 or 3 of the sites. And again, we kind of hold on one of the sites if we just don't get a good proposal. How soon will applicants know if if their proposal has been accepted or denied? Will they be given any information as to why their application? So again, the initial period closes July 1st. Nelson, can you speak to any of the process in terms of anybody that might you know, might not make the cut to move forward, how they're notified?
Well, I think with this one here, we're talking specifically about Oakwood cluster, Oakwood. I think the kind of what Justin kind of spelled out in his first slide in terms of the timeline. The expectation is that we want any interested applicants to respond by July 1st, and then within 4 weeks, essentially a month, gives the ability for Justin and Lisa and their team to review and then kind of decide in terms of the next steps to essentially shortlist and get to the point of kind of refining. Again, you're not expected to provide a full design package as part of your July 1st deadline, but really they're looking at proposed plans and essentially conceptually how that fits into the kind of what the framework where Justin's kind of talking about. You see clearly that there's clusters, 6 clusters here, 6 sites, and if we can get something, you know, that there's a concentration of properties that could potentially be built and designed to kind of work to enhance each other. And obviously Oakwood and Lake Park are kind of like the nexus of like kind of what's happening here. But again, this is not for Oakwood Club, for these sites here, this is not the you know, we do want to kind of, I guess, recalibrate and refocus. This is a pre-submittable webinar. There's gonna be plenty of opportunity for public engagement, stuff like that, what Justin talked about later in the fall. So this is a lot of questions I kind of see in terms of the questions coming up here are questions that are very appropriate questions for a public meeting that which could be once we have some better kind of ideas of what developers are thinking. I don't want to like jump ahead in there because like this is just, you know, there's gonna be a time for all that kind of full engagement and vetting.
Question about, as an African-American developer, must you be certified with the city as MWBE? That's a classification more for contractors, right? As far as
That's correct. Yeah, there isn't really an MBE for developers. So typically, you know, sort of we just look for ownership, you know, that it's Black-owned or, minority-owned business or woman-owned, sort of development business. But yeah, there's not, the MBWB certification is more for contracting opportunities, usually typically with the city or state, other agencies, yeah.
Can we elaborate on expectations around affordable housing beyond the ARO or the Affordable Requirements Ordinance? So, one of the things that I think that we've learned from, for example, the Invest Southwest process is that LIHTC, which is the tax credit system that typically funds more affordable development, right? So developments that have deeply affordable units or are primarily affordable. That's a difficult process. There are only a handful of developers that really could do that in the city. It takes funding rounds only open up every 2 years. There's also state level credits through IDA. But it is it is a process that takes a lot of work, and at the end of the day, those typically only are able to fund buildings at around 60 units. So
Justin, I think what the question is asking is, he said, can you elaborate on how exceptions will be considered?
exceptions. Sorry, I read expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, or David, did you want to
Yeah,
answer that?
I think in general, we're looking for proposals. So,
Yeah.
kind of give us what you think makes sense. We're trying to understand what the market has to bear in this area. If, straight market rate development can happen, if you're, more interested in doing affordable housing, to Justin's point, like, we're interested to see that as well. I think we want to just kind of understand what the gamut of opportunities are out there for development. And then, this will allow us to kind of review and then work from there based off of the proposals we receive.
Right. Thanks, David. Okay, let's see, moving on. Question about being denied for, I guess, a land sale application or development.
We would
Again,
need to know the specifics of that, so
yeah,
please reach out separately for discussion.
Yeah, if you reach out to info at ChiBlockBuilder, they'll connect with us and let's. I don't want to get off on a tangent, but that's more of a separate conversation.
Yeah. Okay, again, what is the process timeline for interest in other city-owned lots? As I mentioned earlier, anything that is not currently available on BlockBuilder, if you're interested in it, there's a way to signal that just by clicking on that parcel again and starting to fill out information. If you have proposal, you can again speak with the alderman or even send us a note. Everything ultimately will need to be applied to through BlockBuilder. But we're happy to have conversations with folks about ideas, that they have, so that they're not maybe spinning a lot of wheels or spending a lot of money ahead of time on something that might not be consistent with development goals, either from DPD or the alderman.
Yeah, so that's what I have to say.
So again, just in terms of this is an open application process, so anyone can apply to purchase city-owned lots. One thing I'll mention, just in terms of the land sales generally, in the past, there's been various programs that promoted things like dollar lot sales, and we heard a lot of feedback from aldermen that was really devaluing the neighborhoods and the wards. And as a matter of policy, everything has really shifted to market rate land sales, with the exception of projects that, again, either provide beyond the affordable requirements in terms of affordable units, or are some kind of cultural use that are deemed to have a special, really a great public use or benefit for the neighborhood. There's other smaller programs like adjacent lots and things like that. But as a rule of thumb, city land sales are considered to start at the market rate price.
If there are lots that you are interested in and they are not available for sale, please go on ChiBlockBuilder and push the I am interested button so that we will be able to know there's some interest there. Thanks, Justin, for trying to show it. But again, anyone is welcome to apply to what is currently being advertised.
Yeah, I don't think.
Okay, any more questions?
Looks like there were two more that popped into
Yeah.
the chat.
Everything must be submitted. The question is, could we send in a separate deck outside of Block Builder? How much weight would the alderman have on the proposal and development plan? Everything must be submitted through ChiBlockBuilder. We will not be accepting outside of outside applications outside of the platform that has been established. The alderman is the local elected official of the area. He will be a part of our evaluation process. And he's very hands-on with the development of the community.
Yeah, and any of the, these are still city-owned land
Yeah.
sales, and they would need to be approved by city council.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Just as a general note, so everybody understands the process, we're just starting now. And then ultimately, once we have development proposals to move forward with, they will need to go through an entire legislative process. So, that includes if a zoning change is necessary, and then just from the land sale side, every land, and there's discussions about consolidating some of these things, but as of now, every land sale will need to go through the Community Development Commission. And so there's a presentation involving that, and there's paperwork and so forth. And then there's also Plan Commission. If it's not a PD, that's kind of a simple omnibus item. And then after that, we proceed with basically drafting a redevelopment agreement and introducing it to City Council, where it's typically heard at the Committee on Housing and Real Estate. And then if the committee recommends passage, it moves forward to City Council passage, and only then is the city committed to selling the land, and that's not even closing yet. Basically, the land doesn't actually get conveyed to the development team until they meet the closing conditions, which typically are permit drawings and final proof of financing.
So it appears you have your last question for the webinar. Well, maybe not. Okay, we have several more questions.
How do we know what the market rate is on the property? So that was listed as part of this listing. Basically the city is contracted with CBRE, a real estate firm that does our valuations for the block builder listings. So it's like an appraisal essentially.
Yeah, so the kind of what Justin said, if you click on go through ChiBlockBuilder, you click on each individual lot, they'll show you what the market valuation is for a lot. So I would point out that for lots that include a cluster, so like if a lot terms includes like 2 or 3 individual pins, just click on each. For this example here, this is a good one here, Justin. This one consists of 2 lots, and you hover over each lot. They'll tell you in terms of what the market valuation says. One lot is 188, and the other lot is 188. So essentially, the aggregate market value of that cluster is I can't do my math here, like 188 times 2. So whatever that is.
370-ish. Yeah.
And that's available for all lots being listed for this round. I will point out here, since we're on the same page here, the question in terms of when the due date is. If you go to the right, there's that box. It says accepting applications, apply by. They'll tell you exactly what the due date for the application period is.
So I am going through the questions, and I see that there are some questions not related to the project. Those questions such as, do you need a permit to do a community garden? I would like for you to reach out to your alderman. If it's city owned, there is a process. But we are now at 11:10, and I don't know how long we're scheduled for this webinar. I know that there's an individual who asked if they could ask another question. Please submit your question so we can try to address it.
Yeah, I would add, Lisa, that if there's any questions that not related to this submittal webinar, send them to info@ChiBlockBuilder.com, and we have a whole team looking at that. So we'll respond to this like separate kind of questions.
Awesome. We have this
So you're
blocked out.
talking, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we do have the time blocked out till 11:30.
Okay.
But so, certainly if anybody else has any further questions, we still have a few minutes.
So the next question is, are there mandatory financial contributions or pledges from the qualified or awardee developers to help schools, park districts, or be given to help similar agencies? That's more,
Like a
we
community
do
benefits
look at,
agreement.
go ahead, Justin. I'll let
Sorry,
you-
is that like a community benefits agreement? Is that?
Yeah, which
Yes.
we as a city cannot enforce. That has to be something done with the community. However, we do look for community benefits in our RDAs, be it jobs, the level of those jobs,
MWBE requirements.
right,
Yeah.
and the EWBE requirements. So,
And again, just at a high level, I mean, the more, the more people that live here, the more development that happens, and whether that's homeowners or, a multifamily building, they'll be contributing to the tax base, which will ultimately help fund
those parks
those
and
things.
schools.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's, and I think we get so used to it, it's tough to think about it that way, but it's like, yeah, that's what those taxes are for. And that'll, adding to the tax base will tremendously help support those community resources. But
Other institutions.
to Lisa's point, we do also look for additional community impact, whether it's around jobs, affordable housing, open space, amenities, retail, those things that really kind of bring life to a place.
Okay.
To be Lisa, yeah, I guess if there's no other questions, we could give everybody back 15 minutes or so.
Trying to make sure. Thank
Okay,
you.
yeah, thank you. Last call, I guess. And again, we'll post responses and make this video available on the website so people can refer back to it. And again, please, check out the actual development vision document, which really gets more into detail about a lot of the things that we discussed here today, including, more of the technical aspects about application and expectations just from a kind of process and procedure standpoint.
Mhm. All right, thank you all for joining. Good job, Justin.
Lisa.
And we look forward to all of your proposals.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.